future doesn't have to be like that. If you step on in to the secret kindergarten, showing you that your young children hold the key to understanding the universe, understanding the self, and therefore they hold the key to human freedom. Your child is the gatekeeper. Only you can open the gate, and the secret kindergarten is going to show you how.
Hello. Welcome back to the secret kindergarten. I'm your host, Gino, and today's episode is the grown-ups edition of the secret kindergarten. In today's show, we are continuing our exploration of initiation rites. The goal is to find some ways to honor the initiation of the child into his or her next stage of development at the change of teeth at age 7, and bringing back the importance of that milestone, which I hope adds more reverence to the way we engage and treat and respect our young children, our 3-year-olds, our 2-year-olds, our 5-year-olds, yada, yada, yada. That's the idea. Working towards, having an awareness that the clock is ticking and big changes happen at 7. And there is much to achieve in that time through play and engagement and reciprocated learning. All right, you were just listening to Inside the Eye with Fetch, and you can tune into him on Saturdays, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. on Studio A, right here on Revolution.radio. And thank you for tuning into Revolution.radio, the number one listener-supported radio station in the whole world. So please, help support our efforts and airtime by visiting the station's donation section on our website, revolution.radio. And just a reminder that you can find the links to anything I read or refer to during the show in the description of this episode once it's published. On my website, you can check out previous shows in the Revolution Radio archives. You can download my content for grown-ups or my content for kids. My radio show for kids on all podcast platforms, there's over 100 of those. And that show is also good for adults to see, if they want to see how things that they can do for their kids or the kids in their life. The Secret Kindergarten.substack.com, YouTube, Rumble, BitChute, Odysee, and The Secret Kindergarten.com. If you want to support me, I do provide services that you can find on my website, thesecretkindergarten.com. And I wanted today to be just a chill blah 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 show because, well, I do a lot of blah 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 anyway. But you know what? The show must go on. We're trying to find solutions and answers to the modern conundrum that we are in, and trying to get things better for the kids, because we can all be, truthers and all that sort of thing, and that. But if we're not getting that right, if we're not getting our relationships and our engagements and our education right for the kids, well, all that's going to happen is, if we're lucky, they're going to be on Revolution Radio when they grow up, talking about the same things, but probably with much more restriction and to much less people. And we want to change that. That's why we're here, and that's why we know what we know and we do what we do. Hubris, perhaps, because I don't have children, but I was an early childhood teacher and I was a child. So, yeah, that's me. That's what I do. That's what this is all about. Okay, Christmas coming up. Nevertheless, I will be here on the show next week. So let's just keep going with figuring out what to do. Okay. Let's look at the impact of ritual on child cognition. And this is a book by Veronika, Rybanska, written in 2020. Now, I don't know if you know, I'm already starting my blah blah blah, but in Canada they want to ban all books published after, I believe it's 2007. And the reason I try my best to remember to mention when the book was written is because you want to take these things with a pinch of salt if they're written after 2007. Probably after 1920. But yeah, you know what I mean. Okay, so here we go. We'll look at her introduction. Modern society increasingly promotes things that are fast or even immediate. Nobody wants to wait for anything, and people often choose goods and services based on how fast they can deliver their promised results. As a striking contrast, many aspects of human life, human social life, require that things take time in order to be done to their fullest. For example, we emphasize to our children to stay in school and study for years to achieve a more successful life. Or we even forgo many religious prohibitions in order to receive divine compensation in this life, or depending on one's tradition, the afterlife or the next. This prompts the question, why are we willing to wait to receive a reward later, even years and years later? This book attempts to shed some light on this question by examining the effect of ritual participation on our ability to delay gratification. So I'm just going to step out, because if this is really boring, I'm going to skip it. I have read this part, but what am I trying to say? What she's doing is basically what we're going to see is that delay gratification is important for human beings. That's a popular topic on the entrepreneur, brotrepreneur, be successful in 20 seconds YouTube circuit. And it's it's an important thing. Okay, there's all those communities, abstinence communities to delay gratification, to grow their brain and all those sorts of things, right? So basically, she's looking at it from the viewpoint of things we do as ritual, which are delaying gratification. Just first thing that comes to mind is saying grace before you eat, right? Instead of just tucking in, you stop, say a prayer, and then you eat. Okay, in modern society, manufacturers and advertisers constantly promise to gratify our needs on demand and reduce our waiting times. Shampoos are 2-in-1, because who has time for conditioner? The internet is high speed, because watching the little spinning wheel drives people crazy. Food must be fast, because who has the time to cook or even wait for someone else to cook for us? And I'm just going to step out and say, already, this is just having a theme of like taking your time. And the secret to kindergarten has always been about, trying to encourage people to make time, which is the true currency. It's the only thing of real value. Obviously our attention, right? Time and attention are the only currencies of any value, because that's the things that we truly spend that are real. So, this is hinting at, slowing down for the kids, taking time as beneficial. Such advertising comes with the promise of saving time that you can use to do things that you actually like, things that really matter. You can spend less time washing your hair and more time with your family and friends, nagging them to put down their phones with high-speed internet access to a universe of information at their fingertips. Nothing like quality time spent with your loved ones. However, when we think about the things that really matter, the goals that are highly desirable in life benefit from long-term planning and waiting. For example, pursuing a degree, choosing a partner, planning a family, leaving a job, buying a house. The gratification or final reward for all of these examples only come after months or even years of waiting. And as we all know, waiting is not easy, yet we work to achieve at least some of these goals, investing time, money, physical resources, emotional effort into delaying our gratification. And in my, just stepping out again, in my other show, Other World Connections, we do a lot on, self-improvement in order to achieve goals. And I think the paradigm that we live in destroys or, suppresses this aspect of being a human being. I think the TV and the abandonment and the daycares and that whole paradigm where the parents have to just work, and we're led to believe that, it's okay to just only provide because that's all you can really have time to do in this world as a parent, is just provide for your kids, which of course is important, but it's become a need that is something that, would just automatically, it's more like, what am I trying to say? That's more instinctive than, that's an instinct rather than a goal, right? That's like base level, but base level has become the goal. And so in Other World Connections is really trying to repair that as an adult. And the secret kindergarten is to try and prevent that. All right. In this book, I overview a new approach to ritual and child development that argues that rituals increase a child's ability to delay gratification, which have significant positive socio-economic effects for them later in life and could be critical to our understanding of the development of rituals in cultures and religions. All right. Deciding to delay gratification, defined as the ability to resist a smaller but more immediate reward in order to receive a greater but delayed reward, typically involves weighing up the relative benefits and costs of waiting. And in future episodes, we're going to stick with this. In future episodes, we're going to look at things that can be done there. That means that even though you know something might take time and effort to achieve, you still aim to achieve it because it is worth your while. Situations in which we find ourselves considering delaying gratification may involve predicting or anticipating the future state of ourself and others, and assessing how current behavior can influence these future states. A perfect example of this, and a really, really important and wholesome activity that families can do and should do, and kind of exist because it's kind of just like a vibration of, an extension of the vibration of just family, wholesome family living, is baking bread from scratch. Flour, yeast, water, making it, letting it rise, waiting for it to rise, baking it, and then enjoying it, bringing the children on that experience, getting messy. Easier said than done, but that's probably one of the best home family activities that the whole family can join in together that promotes this dynamic here. Okay, so continuing. Even though the examples included so far mostly concerned adult life, our abilities to employ cognitive skills that we need for delaying gratification are developed long before we can fully engage them. Earlier research suggests that children as young as 3 are able to reason about hypothetical futures. Okay, so we're going to flex that ability by doing things like baking bread. And they use future-oriented language when describing possible events for the future. For example, young children can give a simple account of what happens when you bake cookies or go to a friend's house, go to school or play with a friend. Granted, they might not be able to predict every aspect of what might happen, but they can give you a reliable description that is based on their past experiences and knowledge. A child's life is full of situations in which they must engage in surprisingly complex cognitive tasks, like representing their future selves. For example, being rewarded for waiting for something, and delaying gratification. Shout out a response to teacher's question instead of raising one's hand and waiting to be called on. Okay, so these are little mini rituals. That's what these are being described as. Often, we as adults overlook this because we pay little attention to the world of our children and mostly assume that today's children receive everything with a silver spoon. Even with all the knowledge, reason, arguments, and cognitive abilities we have as adults, we know how difficult some situations can get and how many of us quit long before we achieve our goals simply because we cannot bear it any longer. I know the feeling. Now imagine how hard it must be for a 4-year-old who is still developing and learning a lot about the world, or rather, instead of imagining children as imperfect versions of adults, which is what most people do, and it's what motivates me to do this. And you don't necessarily need children to treat children as imperfect versions of adults, and you don't need to not have children to view them as that either. It's a behavioral thing. It's a consciousness thing. Imagine how strong and smart children really are to be able to navigate these situations at such an early age, with their cognitive abilities going through major developmental changes. All right. Okay, so let's look at her chapter on rituals. Even though the word ritual is often connected to exotic societies or viewed as somehow exclusive to the domain of religion, the fact is that ritual encompasses a lot more than that. No social group of nearly any age lacks rituals. Whether it is crossing oneself for protection, knocking on wood for good luck, morning rituals of getting ready, or eating special meals in specific ways, we engage in a multitude of rituals on a daily basis, often without realizing it. Rituals serve to give meanings to various aspects of life on an individual level, but shape societies based on mutually agreed behaviors, beliefs, norms, and ideologies. And that makes me think of the Rosicrucian view of child training and Rudolf Steiner's view of child training, child engagement, is to be treating the child with a reverence, which is reverence is like deep respect. The reason I'm saying that is that, what's starting to emerge in my understanding of things on this exploration of initiation, after talking with Jerry last week from Bridges Well on Revolution Radio, aka Mitzi, she explained these rituals, and she also sort of highlighted that it's not so pompous and ceremonial and all that sort of thing. It is there are those big ceremonies, but just how they go about things with a respect for children. It doesn't have to be what comes to mind when we say ritual, and that's what's being explained here. So what I'm trying to say is that I get to pull in the reins a bit here. I guess I was looking for something that was a bit more, incense, candles, and not necessarily white robes, but you get what I mean. I thought maybe there was something more, more like ritualistic, but I think it might be just some milestones, some markers, and some behaviors that we can do, and some little things that we can do that aren't so out of the ordinary, but what it comes down to is just being deeply respectful. So respecting these changes, respecting these transitions in our day-to-day life. So perhaps it might be just saying grace and this sort of thing, and we're going to find some things quite simple for when a child becomes 7, is what I'm saying. Okay. Excuse me. Right. Rituals are a pervasive feature of every human society. They mark many important events and play important roles in different aspects of life. For example, it has long been recognized that rituals can be a response to dangerous and anxiety-inducing situations and times, and help people to deal with uncontrollable or unknown conditions. This idea has found support by recent research concerning how religion can serve to mitigate feelings of anxiety. For example, recent research found that church attendance rates increased following an earthquake in New Zealand. However, this isn't the only role of ritual. Rituals can also be important from an economic perspective, in terms of influencing the behavior of the market. By establishing individual and group identity, some rituals promote in-group trust and reciprocity. They can also serve as signaling devices for mutual cooperation intent. by giving a gift or participating in established customs. Okay, so that is important because I think we're going to find out some things. Just giving a gift, participating, it's like at birthday parties and stuff. Okay. Exchanges of goods and services, I guess that's what they mean as commerce there. Rituals seem to have potentially wide-ranging effects on people's anticipations, interactions, and well-being. They can promote feelings of security and trust and encourage social bonding. Okay, let's keep going. Since the time of Piaget, this is Play the Game, Children's Rituals. The chapter from The Impact of Ritual on Child Cognition. From the time of Piaget, 1950, and Freud, 1965, ritualized behavior has been viewed as a normal part of children's development. Normal ritualized behavior begins early in childhood and continues throughout development. It is characterized by repetitive elements and adherence to rules that are imposed by the child on his or her own behavior. It involves preoccupation with the just right ordering of things. For example, arranging toys, placing the pillow on the bed in the exact way. The precise course of actions, for example, the particular ordering of daily activities. Preferred routines, for example, performing bedtime activities in a particular order. Sitting on the same spot while watching television. And eating rituals. Potatoes not touching any other food on the plate, or using a favorite bowl for cereals. So these things are all important. This is what it's like for young children. And yeah, I guess you can, adults can manipulate those in a certain way, you know, having, well, as I always recommend, fairy tales available as the stories to read at bedtime. And, you know, what's the favorite fairy tale? And what does that mean? Rumpelstiltskin's a good one. We've gone through that, haven't we? All right. Okay. As children age and gain more understanding about the surrounding environment, their rituals change. The near-compulsive rigidity gives way to less rule-driven behaviors. Most children start to engage in ritualized behavior in a limited range of situations starting age 2, peaking in middle childhood with more sophisticated ritualized behavior reaching as far as adolescence. At 2.5 years of age, children begin to expect routines and require things to be done just so, preferring the familiar ways of activities and expressing high sensitivity in relation to minute details until some subjective sensory perceptual criterion has been reached. So it's part of their learning, part of their development. At this age, ritualized behaviors might help children to overcome anxiety and enhance their cognitive control over the course of daily activities through familiarity with the courses of actions, the people they interact with during those actions, and the items used. By the age of 4, children are more comfortable with change. However, some rituals are still important. For example, bedtime ceremonies. They stick around and must be performed rigidly. All right. So this is where they get their sense of belonging and their sense of self and security. Between 5 and 6 years of age, children's ritualization is characterized by group play with elaborate rules and rhymes, as we see in classic games like hopscotch, jacks, and jump rope. Starting from the age of 6, children's play becomes dominated by elaborate rules and prohibitions. Around the age of 7, children start collecting things like posters, stickers, cars or figures, and later, at around 10 years of age, obsession with an activity or a famous person is common. Also during this period, children become more understanding of causal and temporal relations and rely less on repetitive, rigid behaviors as they become conscious at age 7 and become individuated. So yes, 7-year-olds start collecting things. Okay, important note. Alright, continuing. Although children's ritualistic behaviours might resemble those of patients with obsessive-compulsive disorder, they are not emotionally distressing, incapacitating, or isolating, and do not lead to social isolation and withdrawal. To the contrary, normal rituals during the course of children's development are presumed to help with mastering anxiety and fears, and with enhancing one's socialization. By using rituals, children try to enforce consistency on objects and significant others to make their environment more predictable, thereby reducing the possibility of unpredictable and potentially threat and anxiety-inducing situations. Articulated rules included in rituals help the children to govern their own behavior and the behavior of others. In other words, rituals are important for mastering anxieties and fears, as well as for warding off dreaded events. Reflecting on children's understanding of the world and their place in it, the amount and character of dreaded events change over developmental stages, and past studies have shown that. As a consequence, these changes influence the rituals children engage in. Okay. With the start of school attendance and richer social interactions, fears related to injuries and death and social fears such as peer rejection or other social anxieties prevail. This results in abandoning private rituals to some extent and having a higher engagement in social rituals to ensure group acceptance and fulfill the need of belonging. And I believe this is, another milestone, another initiation into the matrix, or, the sheep herd, okay? This sort of abandonment and trying to belong, needing to belong and feeling accepted to feel safe and protected and okay, to feel okay. The need of belonging. And I think how we treat our young children, or how much time and attention we spend on them in the appropriate way, reflects how much they need to feel like they need to belong, or having this higher engagement in social rituals. I think there's what am I trying to say? There's a correlation there. How much they need to feel they need to belong is what, that's what I'm trying to say. I don't think it means that they're just going to reject everything because you spent a lot of time with them. I just mean that, I think there's going to be less anxiety around that, less of a need to join the herd. These rituals require individuals to comply with the requirements of the society they live in. This is hypothesized to involve higher cognitive control in order to perform normative convention in an appropriate manner for individuals to avoid social threats such as ridicule or ostracism. Yeah. So I guess we can't really change the whole society overnight, but we can start by spending more time and attention with young children to give them more of a sense of belonging to you and your values and the family and the ideals that go on there. Then if, this sending them off to school has to happen, which generally it does, they can see it as just, a bit of a, maybe perhaps just like a hurdle of life, and something goes on there. They don't have to feel completely ostracized or ridiculed because they're going home to something better, something that they know is more right, perhaps. I mean, easier said than done, and, I don't wish ostracism and ridicule on anybody. Another thing that drives me to do the secret kindergarten. So let's have a look at... I haven't written the author down. I better bring this up. Your 7-Year-Old. Life in a Minor Key by Louise Bates Ames. Okay. When I publish this, I'll post the link to the book. So, this is about what 7-year-olds are like. Okay, so let's look at the relationship with the mother. So this chapter is called Mother. The mother-child relationship is now much less tangled than it may have been at 6, less and intense than it will be at 8. 6, the centre of his own universe, tends to take things out on Mother when life goes wrong. 8's demands of her are often hard to fill. At 7, things are more relaxed. Much of the time, boy or girl gets on rather well with Mother. The relationship is more companionable and less demanding than earlier. Mothers often say of their 7-year-olds, "He's better now." This may be due in part to the fact that Mother is beginning to release her child, just as boy or girl is beginning to release her. This reciprocal letting go makes things easier for both. Mother gives fewer commands. Child responds better than earlier to those she does give. 7 wants and needs his mother to listen to his many complaints, to sympathize with his miseries, to support him when things go wrong, which they often do. He needs her to calm his fears, soothe his anxieties, solve his many real or imagined problems. 7 also needs her to argue with, "But Mum, why do I have to?" At 6, if things were bad between children and mothers, most children preferred to stay and fight things out on the spot. At 7, they are more likely to walk away muttering, "Not fair." They may preface their departures with some rude remark, such as, "Why should I?" But resistance to commands may not go much further than this. Often the boy or girl merely stays on the spot and looks very, very sad. 7 is sometimes described as self-willed, and may indeed get into a real battle of wills with his mother. In fact, there is now and then something almost unchildlike in the force of feelings expressed. Not just about tasks to be carried out, but about purely theoretical topics. 7's direct relationship with Mother tends to be friendly and forgiving. Most can now, as they may not be able to do at 8, forgive her a slight mistake. At heart, their relationship is a comfortable and sympathetic one, and for the most part not over-involved. So there's a bit of letting go at 7. In fact, things tend to be very companionable between them. 7 likes to use the word we refer to Mother and self. Likes to use the word we to refer to Mother and self, and enjoys it when they do things together, whether going on an excursion or just having a nice little session in which Mother reads to him. Some 7s write their mothers very friendly notes expressing a wish for the mother's health and or happiness. Some 7s are extremely proud of their mothers, though self-conscious about them in public, especially if the mother visits school. A very special thing at this age is that the child cares what his mother thinks of him. 6 cares what she does to or with him. 8's concern is for what she feels towards him. But at 7, that thoughtful age, it is her opinion that counts. In fact, many a mother may be surprised to hear son or daughter quoting bits of her advice. She says, "Be patient," or she says, "Don't be too anxious." Okay, the 7-year-old's relationship with the father. Unfortunately, fathers are becoming a rarer commodity today in the past. This book was written in 1989. Although many of us still take the two-parent family more or less for granted, recent government figures have it that only 80% of white children, only 42% of black, are actually being brought up in a two-parent home. Even in conventional two-parent families, commuting fathers may find relatively little time to spend with their children. So in this regard, we're all pretty much in the same boat. This is all to the bad, because as boy or girl grows older, father is increasingly needed, not to mention appreciated and enjoyed. Boys, for the most part, greatly admire their fathers, and some are said to worship them. Time with him, especially time alone with him, is greatly treasured. Whatever the activity they may be enjoying together, boys particularly appreciate fathers who will participate with them in any organized sport, such as pitching baseball. They also like to go on long walks with their fathers or share with them such activities as boating or fishing. Many boys have long, confidential talks with their dads. They relate their worries, problems, and sometimes their misdeeds. Girls in general tend to have more emotional relationships with their fathers, are extremely sensitive to any reprimand from them, and may be jealous of father's attention to mother. Both boys and girls tend to seek out their fathers more than their mothers when they need information about things outside the home. This may be especially true in this computer age. If the family does have a home computer, child and father tend to enjoy this new activity, and even before we had computers, many a mother staved off certain difficult questions with, "Ask your father," even when she suspected that father did not know the answer either. And I just want to say, running out of time. I do want to say that if you watch like YouTube videos of, these young men going out in public and doing things, and I'm talking like, pranks, basically pranks, there's a lot of them. But what you find in these videos with these young men walking around with cameras, the amount of 7-year-olds and young boys, like middle childhood boys that show up and hang around and want to talk and ask questions to the young man. And it's because of this. It's because of what we've been talking about. So it's good for 7-year-olds to have a man in their life. Men or a man. It's important. It's key. And I'm talking to, the truth community here. It's important for knowledge and learning about things that go on outside of the home. Max Heindel, The Rosicrucian Principles of Child Training. I don't think this was written in 1909, but I've just put that in because it's probably around this time. This is a book published later, or a collection of his writings on Rosicrucian Principles of Child Training. By the 7th year, the vital body of the child has reached a perfection sufficient to allow it to receive impacts from the outside world. There we go. Ready to figure out what's going on in the outside world. 7 years of age. It sheds its protective covering of ether and commences its free life. And now the time begins in which the educator may work on the vital body to help it in the formation of memory, conscience, good habits, and a harmonious temperament. Authority and discipleship are the watchwords of this epoch, when the child is to learn the meanings of things. And we've mentioned the word authority above, and discipleship being, connected with one another to, a higher sort of learning. And this gets skewed at 7 years old in the matrix, in the system, in the institutions. That the authority becomes somehow taken out of the self. Okay. We should not, if we have a precocious child, seek to goad it into a course of study which requires an enormous expenditure of thought. Child prodigies have usually, as previously stated, become men and women of less than ordinary mentality. The child should be allowed to follow his own inclination in that respect. His faculty of observation should be cultivated. He should be taught especially by living examples. Let him see the drunk, and what vice has led him to. Then show him the good man, and set before him high ideals. At this time, he should be prepared to husband the force which is now awakened in him, and which will enable him to generate his kind at the end of the second period of 7 years. He should not be allowed to gather knowledge from polluted sources because the parents shirk the responsibility of telling him from a mistaken sense of modesty. It is the bounden duty of the educator to properly enlighten the child, not to do this like putting him blindfolded among innumerable pitfalls, with the admonition not to stumble. Tear the bandage away at least. He will be handicapped sufficiently without that. Okay, and then it goes on, he goes on to, which we've mentioned before, that teaching about pollination and the role of the bee, and yeah, the process of pollination is important for children to prepare them for puberty and sex education. That once, if you in childhood, if they learn about pollination and understand that whole process, because that is kind of innocent, but it's also it is sexual reproduction, right? In the plant world, so teaching them all about that is the appropriate time in childhood, and I think he's saying like middle childhood, yeah. Learning about how the world works, right? But giving this knowledge to children sets them up for appropriate reception of sex education at puberty. And when they're taught about that, it's not a shameful, embarrassing, or awkward thing. It's just, oh, that makes sense. And the Rosicrucian principle, Rosicrucian child training, they seem to put high importance on that to get things right when puberty hits. Okay. We are responsible to God for the lives committed to our care, and will have to answer to the law of consequence if we neglect, through slothful conduct, the great opportunity for guiding the early steps of a fellow being in the right path. An example is always better than precept. And so here we are at the end, and I skipped a little bit. I want to say that I have found something to initiate a child to 7 years old, and guess what? It's buying them a computer. And I think as an adult, easier said than done, computers are expensive, but maybe the computer thing can be talked about and saved up over a long amount of time, and you get a really good computer. Maybe you already have one. So I don't know, but buying the 7-year-old his or her own computer and making it a really big deal. So then the man in the life of the child, and if you don't have a man in your life, then get one. It's called Tinder. I know, easier said than done. Find a big buddy, okay, a neighbor, somebody. There are good men out there, and they can sit down at 7 years old with the man and explore things about the outside world. That's just one example that we've discovered after a few episodes of looking at initiation. But this is something without white robes, candles, incense, and Latin incantations. I'm just saying, you could look at as an idea that 7-year-old, it's your special birthday, you're getting a computer. Yeah, delayed gratification. Oh, but if you don't do that, well, we're not going to be able to afford to buy a computer. Your computer for your 7th birthday. Oh my gosh, you're 7. Congratulations. Here's your computer. Yeah, you get to learn about stuff. I don't know how it's going to look, but it's come up here now, right? From all this exploration, buying a computer. So 7-year-olds begin or need training to acquire memory, conscience, good habits, and a harmonious temperament, authority and discipleship. Around the age of 7, children start collecting things. So we're going to find out, I don't know how, children should be able to do what they want, right? Choose what they want. So I don't know how to, I don't know what things they could collect that are going to be better for their outcome. I don't know how a parent can influence that. I like to think you could, if you spend enough time and attention with them, that they're more connected with you and they regard you and what you suggest over the TV or whatever. And we're going to find out some solutions there, but we haven't yet. But we know that children start collecting things like posters, stickers, cars or figures. For me, 1989, I was 7 years old. It was Batman the movie. I collected the cards with the chewing gum, and we used to trade with people in the neighborhood, and that's how I got to know all people in the neighborhood. We would trade cards with each other, and I was famous for one day because I had a card that nobody had. Anyway, 7-year-old cares what mother thinks of him or her, so listening and forgiveness are really important between the mother and child at 7 years old. So maybe we can figure out something on the 7th birthday that opens that up. 7-year-old goes to father for information of things outside the home. That's where the computer comes in. And that starts at 7. So buying a computer, the best thing I've come up with so far, with father around, with male paternal figure around to sit at the computer and look at things and learn about things. So a sense of closeness and opening up and connectedness with family is kind of happening and a need at around 7 years old. So knowing just 7 is a special time for all of that is probably enough. So thanks so much for tuning in to The Secret Kindergarten. Thanks so much for this year, everybody. Well, we'll see you next week. That'll be before the new year. So Merry Christmas, everyone. Take care. Love you guys. See you at the next one.